And now we go now live to Venezuela as another flight carrying the Venezuelan migrants arrive in the country through the government's plans back to the homeland, who is landing at Simón Bolívar International Airport in Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira, as you can see. We are the witnesses the arrival of the 7th flight and the 5th phase since the announcement earlier this year of the government's commitment to the safe return of Venezuelan connationals aims the massive deportation campaign being carried out by the U.S. administration of Donald Trump. As we remember the flights that have early arrived from the United States hasn't arrived directly in the Bolívar Republic of Venezuela. They arrive in El Salvador, illegally kidnapping connationals, Venezuelan connationals in El Salvador. In this way, earlier this week, President Nicolás Maduro highlighted the government of Venezuela has increased its efforts to ensure this return to the Venezuelan migrants who are victims of Trump administration immigration policies, specifically who are illegally sent to El Salvador. As we said, the government of Venezuela are doing their best to return the Venezuelan migrants kidnapped in El Salvador, illegally deported from the United States. This process is part of the plan Back to the Homeland, a humanitarian effort to the government of Venezuela to repatriate Venezuelans who, after migrating in search of a better future in the U.S., were deported and faced inhuman conditions. Let us recall that the plan Back to the Homeland was established by President Nicolás Maduro in 2018 as a humanitarian initiative to facilitate the return of Venezuelan migrants who had left the country deceived by the American dream, promising them a better life and funding the opposite. Through this plan, the government has managed the repatriate more than 914,000 Venezuelans since its activation in 2018. There have been Back to the Homeland Plan's flights arrived in Venezuela since 2018 from Peru, Colombia, the United States, and other countries around the world. This early today at 11 a.m. local time, Venezuelan local time, a flight arrived from Mexico to Venezuela, carrying around 313 people, among them 151 children, 102 women, and 60 men. There was the Minister of Interior Relations, Justice and Peace, Diosdado Cabello, who emphasized that the different security and child protection agencies as well as medical agencies were present at the airport, and is the same in this case. The agencies of health protection and medical agencies are present to check the people who is arriving in this flight. This flight, as we have mentioned, is a part of the government's commitment to the safe return to the connationals in the massive deportation campaign that is being carried out by the U.S. administration of Donald Trump. And something that the Minister of Interior, Justice and Peace of Venezuela said when this flight, the first flight of today that arrived in the Maiquetía airport, was that 1,610 Venezuelans have already returned to the country under the return to the Back to the Homeland Plan. As you can see, there is landing the airplane. Let's remember something important, that it's important to bring to the table that is the Venezuelans. The Venezuelans that are in El Salvador illegally kidnapped in confinement camps are the Venezuelan who has no criminal charges, are the normal people who went to the United States or another country around the world to look for better life conditions, and they were illegally trapped and illegally returned and illegally kidnapped in El Salvador like they were criminals when they are not. The flights operated by the state-owned airline Conviasa, which has become the flagship of the Back to the Homeland Plan, are free of charge and seeks to offer an alternative for those migrants who wish to return. And now let's listen to the statements.
Where a flight landed from the States, and from there are 198 people coming from repatriated. Well, 12 are women and the rest are men. According to the evaluation that has been made by the Venezuelan authorities, according to police records and criminal records, there's not a single one that has criminal records or any international warrant. From this group of repatriated that are arriving, there are people that have some police records. The ones that arrive here, who, as has been indicated in all occasions, will be examined thoroughly for our authorities. And those that have a debt with justice, well, without a doubt, will go to another section, which will be the follow-up of that debt that they have with justice. However, we must clarify, according to the analysis and the study, because before boarding all these repatriated, there were people that checked one by one with their fingerprints to verify first that they are Venezuelan citizens, and not a one, according to what is established on that list of repatriated that we are about to receive, none belong to the infamous train Aragua. Today, more than ever, we are committed with the return of Venezuelans to our country. And here, there is a number of institutions that answer to one guideline: to welcome our connationals, to give them a humane treatment, to give them a treatment as citizens of this great homeland that allows them, once they arrive here to their territory, to be able to reincorporate themselves in the daily life of society, in the country, in public activities and private activities of each one of them. That's the reason why we are about to welcome the flight. There's a whole operation installed. First will be the revision that migration does, customs. Then there's a whole protocol where health checkups are done, the registries, where people are evaluated, even the location of the home where they are going to live, because there's a system that guarantees to all repatriated that are arriving that do not have any kind of debt with justice to return immediately to their homes, accompanied with all the institutions that do daily life in our republic. Talking about the intelligence agencies, human rights agencies, everything that is associated with the great missions, and allows us in this manner so that our repatriated have that helping hand, so that they feel that they arrive to their homeland, and that here our President Nicolas Maduro welcomes them, invites them to be part of the productive process, and that the dream for which they were taken to their countries, that they build it here in their homeland. Therefore, starting from now, we are going to prepare and deploy to receive these 198 Venezuelans, so that immediately they feel that they are being hosted by the authorities. Have a good afternoon.
And as we were saying, there are people arriving in the Maiquetía airport in the La Guaira state, which are carrying Venezuelan nationals that could return safe and sound to the country, back to the Homeland Plan that the Venezuelan government implemented since 2018 and has been repatriating Venezuelans safely to the country. As we see, we are witnessing the arrival of the 7th flight since the announcements earlier this year, as the government is committed to return the connationals in the massive deportation campaigns being carried out by the U.S. administration of Donald Trump, who is illegally kidnapping Venezuelans in concentration camps in El Salvador, together with the agreement and with the joining of the Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele. Earlier this week, the president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, highlighted that the government of Venezuela has increased its efforts to ensure the return of Venezuelan migrants who are victims of these Trump administration immigration policies, or those who are illegally sent to El Salvador. These plans now primarily is to prevent that Venezuelan migrants in the United States go to El Salvador to be illegally kidnapped by the order of the Trump administration. People who has no criminal charges, people who are not part of the extended Trinidad, people who are just civilians who went to the United States to found the American dream, to have real life conditions, and were illegally kidnapped, were illegally sent to El Salvador, and are being treated like they were criminals with inhuman conditions, or being humiliated, and there are allegations of tortures, and they're concentrated in camps like they were Nazis. This process, as we are saying, this Back to the Homeland Plan is part of humanitarian efforts of the government of Venezuela to repatriate Venezuelans after the migrating in search for better life in the U.S. were deported and facing inhuman conditions in El Salvador. The flight operated by the state-owned airline Conviasa has become the flagship of the Back to the Homeland Plan, are free of charge and seeks to offer an alternative for those migrants who wish to return to Venezuela and which are coming through thanks to the Back to the Homeland Plan and are avoiding to be illegally deported to El Salvador and being treated like they were criminals, but they are not. And the plan of the Back to the Homeland is returned to them. Is returning them to Venezuela, providing them the physical, the psychological support, social and economic assistance for their reintegration into society. As we can see in a few moments, the Venezuelans will be. We will see the Venezuelans who has arrived to the country from the United States in the Conviasa airplane. It's important to mention that 198 Venezuelan migrants are landing here in the Maiquetía airport in the state of La Guaira. The rescue from the United States, from the Trump administration, thanks to the Back to the Homeland Plan of the Venezuelan government. We're just waiting for them to land off the plane and they can be together with their families safe and with the support of the government who has made this real. At some point, we see someone's going upstairs, and in a few moments they will open the door, and Venezuelans who are of the plane will be honored, will be together with their families, will be together and thankful with the Venezuelan government that are returning as civilians, as proud civilians, as people who has done nothing, and people who have been receiving bad treatment from the government of the United States. We can wait a few minutes to see the 198 migrants who just arrived in the Venezuelan International Airport of Maiquetía in the state of La Guaira. This is the 7th flight. One arrived first this morning at 11 a.m. local time at the same airport, and this is the second who was expected for the day. Let's remember that the first flight that was carrying repatriated migrants and arrived at the international airport of Maiquetía with the back to the Homeland Plan arrived from Mexico and received by the Venezuelan Minister of Interior Relations, Justice and Peace, Cabello, and he welcomed 313 people, among them 151 children, 102 women, and 60 men. It is important to emphasize that the Minister of Interior, Cabello, emphasized that different security and child protection agencies, as well as medical agencies, were present at the airport, as the flight is part of the government's commitment to the safe return to the national and domestic deportation campaigns being carried out by the U.S. administration of Donald Trump. It is important to note that in this case also will be present the protection agencies, the child protection agency, medical agencies that also will, and security also will be there for the safety of the repatriated people. We'll give you more information about the airplanes that are landing in La Maiquetía Airport in the state of La Guaira with the repatriated national, the 198 migrants that arrived to Venezuela from the back to the Homeland Plan of the government. More information coming up in our news brief from the south.